Hello everyone, welcome back to another card combo. I always do this. Welcome back to another deck profile with me, Chocobilly. And this week I am looking at a deck which I mentioned in my LumiPumi deck profile card combo show video. And it focuses on using the Bartz from Opus 7, who has 3 S abilities. Now, it's a very dated card, but I wanted to try and find a way to maybe reliably use him, or just a sort of deck style that he might fit in. Now, obviously, when utilizing a card like this, he has 3 S's. Now, something like Braska, for example, where you can keep on reusing S's for just an S, is really good because you can discard summons for it, whereas with Bartz, you have to have card name Bartz to discard for it. So, to use all 3 of his S abilities, you need to have 3 Bartzes. Bartz, yeah, whatever. And so it's Spellblade, choose 1 forward, deal at 5k damage. That's perfectly fine, similar to Braska, but actually not as good, and you can't use a summon. Then you got Dual Wield. Until the end of turn, Bartz gains first strike, and his power becomes 10,000. Also not great, because he doesn't gain 10,000 power, his power becomes 10,000, which means that, yeah, if he loses 3k, and then you make his power 10k, he's still then 7k, so it's not amazing. And also, if you use the ability twice, it's always 10k, not 20k. And then, obviously, you've got the Rapid Fire S ability, which is until end turn, Bartz gains Haste, Brave, and Bartz can attack 3 times his turn. But you can only use that if you use Spellblade and Dual Wield, which is quite it's cool. I like the concept of it. It's just the fact that you have to have so many Bartzes, and the card itself isn't as standard amazing. When he enters the field, you get to reactivate 2 5 characters. That's alright, I guess, but yeah, not amazing. So I wanted to build a deck around him which could kind of survive without him, but ultimately is built to utilize his S abilities. So I'll start with the backups, move on to the forwards, and then I'll do the summons and monsters. So first up, we have Windrake. So I wanted to, 1, throw a decent amount of EXs into the deck, but 2, actually have some 5 backups to be able to reactivate off of the Bartz as well. And Windrake is not a bad card, to be perfectly honest with you. So when Windrake enters the field, choose 1 forward, it cannot attack until the end of your opponent's turn. So if you play it on your turn, your opponent still can't play it, still can't attack with that forward until the end of their turn. And similarly, hit an EX, you can stop another forward from attacking as well, which for a 2 CP backup is perfectly fine. It's a 5 character, so it can be reactivated through Bartz. Then you've got Geomancer. So there's lots of standard unit 5 characters, so they'll be able to be reactivated again. No real crystal usage in this deck, not to say that you couldn't use it if you wanted, but ultimately it's in here because it's a 5 character. Then we've got Princess Sarah, so this is something I really wanted to utilise alongside Bartz and some of the other forwards, as you'll see later. Being able to protect you from EXs, let's say hypothetically you do get Bartz's effect off and you can attack with them 3 times. If you attack with them the first time, you hit an Odin, you kill the Bartz. That sucks. So making it so that, actually utilising Princess Sarah to make it so that he can't be killed by EXs is very nice. And obviously if I'm running Princess Sarah, then I'm going to be running Princess Goblin. Yeah, and you do have the discard 1 princess to be able to do something. Or is it, the next damage becomes 0, which is perfectly fine, but I'm pretty sure the only princess in this deck are Princess Sarah, so you'd need, another one of her basically, and there are only 2. Then we've got Minor. You just want to have more consistency with your backups, and that's the way to do it. Princess Goblin to find the Princess Sarah. There is no Warrior of Light in this deck, so you can't search that. And then you've got Kryl. So when Kryl enters the field, select one of the 2 following actions. Choose 1 summon in your break zone, add it to your hand. There are 8 summons, so maybe. Or choose 1 category 5 forward in your break zone, add it to your hand. So there you have one of your first means of being able to get back a Bartz. So you could use Bartz's S, then play Kryl, get back the Bartz, reuse the S potentially, and again she's a 5 character as well, so it means that she can be reactivated. But other 5 forwards that she can get back, Neo X Death. So yeah, that's maybe not what your opponent's expecting through a Kryl, but ultimately it gives you a backup to sacrifice off of the Neo X Death as well. So yeah, in terms of consistency with your backups, you've really only got Minor and Princess Goblin. Princess Goblin, be able to find the Princess Sarah is really, really useful, but it doesn't cover off both your elements. So really what you'd want is Minor to reveal Princess Goblin to search for Sarah, and then you've got 3 backups. Obviously none of those are 5 backups though, so it means that you wouldn't be able to get the reactivation off of Bartz, but still it's 3 backups through fairly decent consistency. Anyway, moving on to the forwards. So Boko. I'm actually going to talk about the Bartzes first, and then I'll talk about all the other forwards. So obviously we have this Bartz, already explained his effect and the idea behind the deck. I also have this Bart. So Dull, put Barts at the bottom of your owner's deck, draw 2 cards. There's only one in the deck, but if you manage to play fairly early on Boko and Barts, playing this dude immediately onto the field to then put him back into the deck to then to get 2 more cards to your hand, it's really useful. And what's better is the fact that this Bartz isn't being put from the field into the break zone, he's been put back into the deck, which means you can still draw him later on down the line for the Bart's S ability. Obviously, if it's in the break zone, that's not the end of the world, you have lots of retrieval in this deck, but still, it's just a nice little combo. So being able to immediately have Bartz online, get yourself 2 more cards, not too shabby. Then yeah, obviously we have this Bartz, and then we have the EX Burst Opus 1 Bartz. So when Bartz enters the field, to activate all the wind characters you control. It's Wind Earth, so you're not going to get everything back, unfortunately. But again, 1, it's EX, so that's kind of nice, and 2, he's bigger, so it means that if you don't think actually playing the smaller Bartzes is going to work, then potentially you can play this dude onto the field. Now, the reason I went for this Bartz over literally any other Bartz is because he is searchable off of Pandemonium, so search for 1 win forward, it costs 5 or more and add to your hand. So there you immediately have one of your chains to be able to go and get a Bartz to then use a Bartz S effect. So yeah, we have 3 Bartzes in the deck, 1 of the 2 cost, 3 of the 3 cost, and 1 of the 5 cost. And this Bartz as well, if it is in the break zone, is able to be recurred through Asura. And then yeah, obviously Boko. Boko gives any of them haste, which is really only applicable to the 2 CP1, but if you want to use it with this dude as well, and just play him onto the field, use a 1 Bartz S to give him 10k and first strike, that's pretty good. He then swings with haste. Right, moving on to Tifa. So, as you'll probably see with the rest of this deck as well, with Gudon, there's a fair few cards that are able to just keep on attacking, and cards that can't be dulled through your opponent's summons or abilities as well, which is very useful because this deck can fall down to ice pretty quickly. So yeah, having Tifa just as a nice little 1 cost that can be played onto the field and ultimately just keep on attacking. Obviously, you have to reactivate, you have to use her ability through paying through backups, you can't discard cards. But with Asura and Evre and Atomos and, you know, all these other cards, you can definitely do that if you want to. And yeah, so there's some maybe pull to be made about having the 4 CP Bartz in this deck, which when it party attacks, it can search for 1 cost and play it onto the field. We've got Boko, we've got Tifa, we've got Mira, but that takes the deck down a slightly different path. And I wanted to focus on, 1, actually trying to use this Bartz, because I think its effect's kind of funny if you do get off with Boko. But that's still not a bad call, getting that Bartz into this deck, be able to search and play Tifa immediately with haste. So yeah, not too bad. Mira. Now, there are 8 monsters in the deck, so again, it's not super likely that you will get something off of her entry effect, but hopefully you will. And ultimately, putting Mira into the break zone to choose a monster it gains this character cannot be broken until the end of the turn is actually really useful when you look at some of the monsters. Obviously, you've got Evre and Atomos, 2 very useful monsters, but actually, if you want to keep your Bartz alive, for example, and your opponent tries to break your Unsanganashi, you can protect it with the Mira. Similarly, with Luminous Puma, if you're using that to try and get something back later down the line, and you don't want it to die to your opponent's, I don't know, Alexander or something like that, use Mira to protect it. Yes, and then we've got Cloud. So here you have one of your first means of searching a Bartz onto the field. So play Cloud onto the field. If he doesn't die by your next turn, you can then dull, put Cloud immediately into the break zone to then search for the 3 CP Bartz and play him onto the field. So now the idea behind a lot of the cards in this deck is how to be able to set up for the Bartz S ability without actually needing necessarily Bartz. So Cloud is one of those means. And what I'll go through now quickly is actually a little play that you can do. So you can have Cloud on the field, ready to use his ability, Pandemonium in hand. You use Cloud to search the Bartz, Bartz enters the field. You can then cast Pandemonium to then go search another Bartz to then use his S ability. You could then play Luminous Puma onto the field, get that Bartz back, use the S ability again, put Luminous Puma into the break zone, get the Bartz back, use it again. So if you've got Cloud ready to go, and then Luminous Puma and Pandemonium in hand, you can actually use Bartz's S ability immediately. So, not too bad. If your opponent hasn't seen much of this deck, and you just want to go ham quickly, might not be too bad. If you've already got stuff like Gudon and Tifa on the field as well, ready to go, that can really blindside your opponent, and you can be going for a lot of points of damage pretty quickly. But yeah, obviously Cloud is also able to search Y'shtola if you want. Again, hasty, which is pretty big. hard to kill, and also hard to block as well. And Lulu, so if you actually want to get back maybe your Asura or your Chocobo, something along those lines, be able to get that and then cast whatever summon you need on the fly, not too bad. Then we've got 2 CP Barts, gone over that, 3 CP Barts, Y'shtola. So alongside the Bart's multi-attacks, I also wanted, well, it's in element, but I wanted to focus on, you know, pretty aggressive acceleration using something like Y'shtola, but also being able to just keep on pushing through points of attack without your opponent really being able to do much about it. Y'shtola, obviously hard to block, hard to kill. Similar with Gudon as well, being able to attack twice, not able to become dull. Your opponent kind of has to rely on break effects or just blocking. Lulu, you can get like Asura, Titan, Chocobo, Kusith, or Pandemonium. Lots of different options. Do what you want. I'll talk about the summons more later, but the costs or the amounts of the amount of these types of summons you have in this deck probably can be changed, and there are lots of cards I put in this deck to mitigate certain effects from happening, which ultimately never happened anyway, so you can probably take them out, but I'll talk more about that in a bit. Gudon can attack twice. You see the theme of the deck. I just quite like him as a card, and he hasn't been played a lot in a while, so it means that when he does come down, your opponent actually has to consider what they do with him. 9 times out of 10, just break him, but still, attacking twice if he does get a chance to be able to attack ain't too bad. But Cecil, so already making it quite hard for your opponent to kill things, but Cecil into Barts this Barts ain't too bad. You get some of your backups back potentially. Could be Gudon, could be Lulu, whatever. Ultimately acting as some form of protection for your Barts so that you actually can set up and then use the S abilities is quite nice. Maybe you Cecil into Cloud, your opponent doesn't know what you're going to pull out, but they want to kill it. Ultimately, unless they have something like XXI, you're able to protect it with Cecil. Neo X Death. Because it's Neo X Death, you want to be able to kill things. I've already gone over the fact that you can retrieve it through Kryl, obviously through Kusith as well, but realistically, he is just a very, very strong card that you probably want on the deck because you need some sort of board clear. Right, going on to the summons. So, Asura, being able to pull back Boko, Tifa, Mira, Cloud, Barts, and then Evray, Gigas, Insanganashi, Atomos is, hugely important. Be able to reactivate all your backups to be able to reuse Tifa's effect, or just keep on casting more things potentially, or ultimately just reactivate 2 forwards. So maybe you got this Barts on the field, reactivate him, then use an S to make him a 10k first striker. Your opponent might not expect that, and you're gonna probably kill something. If your opponent hypothetically attacked with the big Warrior of Light, you then reactivate Barts, use an S ability. If they can't kill him, then you actually can kill out your opponent's Warrior of Light as well. Titan. So the real reason behind using this is because it has the text. All the forwards you control gain this forward cannot become dull through your opponent's summons abilities until the end of the turn. Now Tifa and Gudon already have those effects. However, if you've got Barts ready to attack, Y'shtola ready to attack, maybe Neo X Death as well, your opponent might just do something like, if they've got a lot of nice ice cards or something along those lines, then potentially that could screw with it. But just making it so that things can't become dull and then can keep pushing through points of damage, and your opponent has to work on that. And Titan ultimately is only a 1 CP summon. He can also draw you a card because you get 2 of the effects as well. So it means that you can chop and change it. It's a really versatile card, and I've always really loved this card. But ultimately, its biggest favour it does for you is stopping your forwards from being able to become dull. Chocobo. You should probably have more than 2 Chocobo, and to be honest, you could probably take out some Kusith. The reason there are 3 Kusith in this deck is because it's EX Burst. But ultimately, you probably want to be able to protect a forward and replay it rather than it dying and then getting out of the break zone for the same CP, especially considering the fact that Chocobo does also draw you a card as well. So probably more beneficial for that, but like I said, I wanted to increase the EX count for this deck. Pandemonium. Choose 1 forward of cost 5 or more to get 8,000 damage, or search 1 win forward of cost 5 or more and add it to your hand. So the only 2 you can search are either Barts or Cecil, but those are 2 pretty good cards that are searchable, and getting the Cecil to then play into the Barts, Y'shtola, whatever, is damn good, and this is actually just a really, really good summon. Moving on to the monsters, a lot of them are givens. Evray and Atomos, obviously. Luminous Puma is integral to the deck, to be perfectly honest with you, because 1, it's really easy to be able to play onto the field and just get whatever you need back, but if you're actually planning on using Barts' effects, being able to get 2 Barts to hand immediately for paying 5 for Luminous Puma is important. When I was building this deck, when I was building this deck and I wanted to focus on using that Barts' S abilities, I was racking my brain of the easiest way to be able to use his S effects. How do you find those Barts? Now, you will need 3 Bartzes. So you search 2 off of the Sarah backup Warrior of Light, that searches 2 Warriors of Light, you could go get yourself 2 Bartzes if you wanted. You know, how would you go about this? But actually I think the Luminous Puma fits it better, especially considering you've got Gudon and Tifa in the right elements as well to be able to, you know, keep on attacking as well, so it kind of fits the theme. But ultimately, you only stop using the word ultimately. You only need 1 Bartz in hand, and Bartz on the field, and Luminous Puma in hand, to be able to use all 3 S abilities. Use the S, play Luminous Puma, use the S, break Luminous Puma, use the S. You're good to go. And then you've got Gigas. So when Gigas enters the field, choose one forward, it gains its forward cannot attack or block until the end of the turn. So 1, stalling your opponent long enough so that you can actually build the field to then be able to attack multiple times. 2, attacking multiple times and your opponent can't block. And obviously you can play Gigas onto the field, make something not be able to block. You can then put Gigas into the break zone to then kill something else as well. So actually you're paying, what, a total of, is that 3? Yeah, 3 and the 1 for Gigas. So 4 CP and the Gigas out of hand to be able to stop 2 forwards from blocking. That's not too shabby. And then Unsan Ganashi, because being able to protect your Bartz is super important, but actually protecting your Cecil, your Gudon is really good as well. And if you are at damage 5 and you happen to have a bit of a late game resurgence, then put it into the break zone, activate all the forwards you control, and they can't be targeted by your opponent's summons or abilities. And being able to stop them from being targeted from both is super important. So yeah, just a really good card that hasn't seen play for a long time. This does feel a lot like an Opus 8, Opus 9 deck, but actually it's just a lot of fun to play, and I played it a few times recently, and it did surprisingly well. It takes you a little while to set up, so if your opponent goes super aggro, you're kind of screwed, but that's always the case with aggro, right? But if you do have that, just a few good turns to be able to set up, get things on the field that you need there, and then start swinging really hard, it's just so satisfying. I really like this deck. It was so much fun to build and so much fun to play. Like I said, there are loads of things you could take out and change it. Changing out the Bartzes, increasing or changing the summon counts, maybe having more Tifas, you know, having the Bartz that searches 1 cost as well. There's lots you can do with this deck. You can even switch the elements if you wanted to not be in Earth, for example. Hell, you don't even necessarily have to be in Wind. It's just dependent on how you want to find your Bartzes, right? But yeah, let me know how you guys would build a deck like this. Like, have any of you ever built a successful Bartz deck? Because, I mean, it's an Opus 7 card, right? So we're, what, 19? No, I can do math. We're like 13 sets out of touch now with this card, so yeah, not amazing, but ultimately it was a lot of fun to play. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, be lucky, and I will see you in the next video.